Hey sketchy friends, thanks for joining me for another video. My name is Taria. This is my channel Taria's Sketchy Adventures, where we speak about all things to do with urban sketching, travel sketching, ink and watercolor sketching, really, all of that kind of stuff. Today I wanted to share with you this sketch that I did on location, but I didn't get to finish, and I thought it would be a useful example piece for what I want to speak to you guys today about, which is the #1 thing that will instantly make your sketching better. I won't hold that secret back from you. It is actually to make sure you add darks. So I'm talking like really dark bits. And it is amazing how much difference this makes to your sketch. You go through the ugly stage. I went through the ugly stage with this one. Please know that that happens. Once you get through that ugly stage and you start getting to a later stage where you really sort of pile in those dark bits, that's when things really start to come together. So this is a sketch that I started on location in a place called Springs, just over to the east side of Johannesburg. We actually went there because supposedly it has the second largest collection of Art Deco buildings in the world, second only to Miami. So it was quite a strange experience to go there and try and sketch these buildings. I started this one right at the end of our visit. We stayed overnight and we sketched in the morning, but we ended up chatting to a local lady and a train driver. Well, she is a train driver, but there's no trains to drive, but that's a whole separate matter. And there was this beautiful old train sitting outside the train station. So we didn't have much time, so I only got to sort of drawing the scene. This is a Hahnemuller watercolor sketchbook, just the normal one, not the cotton one. I realized I don't really often talk about the colors that I use very often, and I think it's because I chop and change quite a lot, and I've got quite a few tins now. For the longest time, I was just using the same tin of White Nights, probably since 2020, but I've replaced the odd color either with the same one or added some different ones in there. So well-worn tin of watercolors from 2020. But since then, in the last year or so, my collection's kind of grown a bit. So some of you will have seen the YouTube video where I made a DIY watercolor palette from this old tin that used to belong to my father-in-law. And then also I bought this, some of you might have seen on Instagram, I got this antique cigarette case from Buenos Aires, and I've put my Roman Smile urban sketching colours in this one. But I do really like this selection of colours, and this is kind of what I'm used to at the moment in this tin. So I just want to talk you through what I've got in here. I'd love to say that these are really like conscious, deliberate choices, but unfortunately I still kind of feel like I'll just go with the flow and just kind of take some colours, and I'm still sort of discovering what my preferences are. I'm still gaining my preferences, even though I've been doing this for so many years. I just like to change things up. I like to experiment. Just quickly, I don't know if you guys remember, but in one of my previous YouTube videos about the coastal sketch, I mentioned that I wanted to learn to crochet my own beanie hat. So here it is, and that is all thanks to following some awesome course tutorials on Craftsy. So I'd like to thank Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. It's very kind of them. As you can see, there are many different categories of different creative things that you can learn, whether it's quilting, sewing, baking cakes, through to the visual arts as well, photography, watercolor painting, drawing. There's even stuff here about vegetable gardens and stuff, which is awesome. So there really is quite an array of things, which is nice because, you know, as creative people, I'm sure urban sketching is not the only thing that you do, or even just drawing is not the only thing that you do. Saying that though, there is an amazing category on drawing right here on Craftsy, and you've got all kinds of things: drawing trees, storyboarding, portrait sketching, figure sketching, pen and ink, drawing a colouring book, which is pretty cool. And there's even more. So you can watch any of these classes with your membership. There's stuff here by Urban Sketchers as well. There's an amazing class here actually by Stephen Reddy. I'm a big fan of Stephen's work. He's actually got 2 classes on here. Paul Heaston, and we've got Matt Brame, James Richards, huge fan of James Richards, Shari Blaukopf, Stephanie Bauer. This illustrated nature journaling one as well by Gay Krager is amazing. So much to dig in, and that's just the drawing category, and that's not even all of it. There's show more, and on it goes. For the first 1,000 people that click the link in the description below, you can get a full year for $1.49, $1 US$49. Such an amazing price just for one of these classes, but you get a full 12 months to check out any of these classes in any of these categories. In this tin, I've mainly got Rosa Gallery colors, and that's because they're quite similar or quite an equivalent brand to White Nights. So I ended up getting a set of the Rosa. So they were predetermined colors. I don't have all of them in here, and there was a couple of colors that I chose outside of the set to add in. So I've got Rosa Yellow Ochre, Cadmium Yellow, which is not really a color I ever have had in a set before. I've always had quite muted colours, again, just because I picked the White Night set and the colours were already chosen in that for me. So there's a lot of brighter colours in this particular set. Cadmium Orange, Cadmium Red, Madder Rose, sorry, which is a beautiful colour. A lot of people in my workshop in Australia, I gave them this colour and they all really liked it. Madder Brown, also a very beautiful colour. Then this one is a White Nights colour just because it's one that I had a fresh pan of. That's why it's the only one that's a full pan in here. All the rest are half pans. And I didn't have a brown sort of in this set. Daniel Smith Serpentine Green is just because I had a tube which I was given in a goodie bag somewhere along the line. And again, I didn't have sort of a lightish green. I like to have pre-made greens in my set, especially when it comes to this kind of green. It's just one of my favourite colours and it just makes things go quicker. I don't want to always I use so much green, I don't want to mix it all the time, I'm just lazy. I know there's a lot of advice out there that says you should never use pre-made greens, but rules are made to be broken. Do we not think? So that's, but anyway, gorgeous colour. Again, prefer the White Nights one, but this one's very close. Rosa Mint. I just thought this was a really interesting colour and I just wanted to throw something nice and bright in there. And I have found that it has come in quite useful, but you can probably see from my set, I haven't used it an awful lot. Cerulean Blue is always quite a handy colour for skies and things like that. Ultramarine, Indigo. And then I do love a bit of Moonglow. A lot of people love a bit of Moonglow. I do like Moonglow, so I've got the Daniel Smith Moonglow. And then I've just realised I've got a couple of editions which I've just sneaked in, like really wedged in there. My friend Lauren gave me this Daniel Smith colour, which I think is orange. No, hang on. I'm going to put it on the screen. I can't remember. And then this is a colour made by my friend Margaret. She makes her own watercolours, and this is Buff Titanium because I thought, you know, now and again it comes in handy. Don't use it a lot, but thought, well, I've got it and I've got a bit of space just about, so I'll stick it in there. So I hope that helps. I mean, that was a very long explanation of what colours I've got in here, but I hope that helps. I realise I don't really talk about it very often, and let's get going with this sketch and I'll explain what I'm doing along the way. Okay, so I have spritzed my paints just to wake them up a bit, and I'm using a big brush here. It's the number 10 from a Skoda. I can paint much looser if I've got a nice big brush, so I like to use that. But for smaller areas, I do have a small pointy brush as well. So I've laid down a bit of Moonglow, and then right next to it, I've laid down a bit of that Daniel Smith Quinn Deep Gold. And I just let the colours touch and like sort of run into each other. This train has kind of got that like rusty vibe. Probably going to exaggerate that in my sketch because that's fine. It looks more fun that way. I'm just sort of playing here and dabbing in a bit of madder brown as well, just to see if that works. It might be a bit too much, but that's fine. We're just sort of experimenting. But you can see that Moonglow sort of slightly seeping into that deep gold is like producing quite a nice effect. And I've just put a bit more pigment on the page. I am starting a bit lighter just because, well, it's watercolor. It's always best to start a bit lighter rather than going in too dark. I've gone in a little heavier on this next section. And again, I'm not mixing the two colors on top of each other. I paint a little section in Moonglow, then I paint a little bit with the other color, and I'm just letting them touch and then the watercolor does the rest. I find the more that you mess around with this, the kind of worse it starts to look, the more muddy it can start to get. And I would really recommend just sort of dabbing colours onto the page and letting them just touch rather than heavily painting them together or on top of each other. So I have switched to a slightly smaller brush there just to get around those leaves. So I'm just sort of alternating between the moon glow and this, I keep forgetting the name of the colour, this deep gold, this Quin deep gold here. It's such a beautiful colour. When I saw my friend had it, I was like, ooh. She very kindly gave me a nice squeeze of it into an empty pan. It's very kind of her. It's a beautiful colour. And whilst it might not look super realistic rust, you kind of do get that feel that we're looking at an aged train that's been sort of sat out in the elements for a long time. So it's quite a fun look, I think. Also with the moon glow, what's so nice about it is that it granulates, so there's a lot of texture and sort of the pigment in it kind of splits a little bit. It's just a really nice, interesting colour. I suppose you could probably overdo it, but to be honest with you, I really go for it in the sketch and I use it across the whole train. But I think it works really well with this kind of subject matter where you're looking for that kind of interesting textures and different pigments and stuff like that, or different colours. I just think it looks really nice. But don't worry if you don't have this colour, you can use Payne's Grey. You can even use Payne's Grey with a bit of a cold red, like a Quin Rose or something, mixed in with it, just to give it like a dull purple look. Play around with the colours you've got. You can always swatch them on a separate piece of paper and sort of see what you think will work well and how the pigments, how the different colours interact when you touch them together on the page. Also, the kind of paper that you're using is also going to be a factor into how the colours interact when you touch them next to each other as well. So here I've decided just to go for it with the moon glow. I've got the bigger brush again and I'm just painting in all of this on the bottom in the moon glow. And it might become clearer a little bit later on why I've done that. I am going to go much darker in these areas anyway. So for now, just putting an initial wash of moon glow down is absolutely fine. Arguably could have just left it blank and gone in with the darker colour I'm going to put on top of it later on, but either way is fine. Either way is fine. Sometimes I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out when I'm doing sketches. Actually, that's 99.9% of the time, if not 100% of the time. So I'm just sort of playing as I go. It's like, will this work? Okay, maybe that won't work, but if I try it and it doesn't work, then I know I can cover it up, so it's not a big deal, and so on and so forth. So I find that once you take the pressure off yourself to make a perfect sketch and actually just treat it like an experiment and a learning opportunity, then it just gives you a bit more freedom to mess around and to try something out. And I felt like this was quite a complicated subject matter. It's not something I often sketch, so I did feel a bit overwhelmed when I sat down to sketch this one. And I sort of, only got the front part of the train in, but that's fine. I really wanted to get the kind of leaves, a little bit of litter. I only managed to draw one empty wine bottle or beer bottle at the bottom of the sketch there, but there was a lot more litter. And the railings and just how nature is kind of interacting with like the urban, dare I say it, urban decay, that kind of thing. I just find it's interesting and like a bit more storytelling. So it wasn't completely about the train itself, but also just about the surrounding environment as well. So I didn't mind that I cut off some of the train. I knew I wasn't going to fit it all on my page anyway, just concentrate on like the front section, but also where these leaves and this kind of broken fence and stuff is on the foreground. So now the lighter green here is the Serpentine Green by Daniel Smith. And now I'm going in and I've sped this video up a little bit, but I am going in with just the pure green, the Rosa Gallery green, and you can see how beautifully it interacts with each other. Again, sort of just touching in places so that the two colours interact, but like not too much. so that it all becomes one colour on the page. And also it's a feel thing. So if you've gone too wet and then you add another colour too wet, they'll become a uniform colour on the page eventually. So it's better to just let the first colour dry a tiny bit and then dab in the second colour so that they don't completely mingle and you do still get that separation between the different colours. So this is exactly why I like having the greens ready to go in my set. And, you know, I think they're very nice greens. I think a lot of the advice about not using premixed greens is that because they're not very realistic. Obviously, my sketching style is kind of more illustrative, cartoony, if you will, that kind of thing. So I'm not too worried about a complete realism in the colours, but you can see they're really, really attractive colour greens. They're not like vibrant or, well, they are vibrant, but they're not like that kind of really like hooker's green and that kind of thing, like really fake green. So I found these colours that I like. I do really like Daniel Smith gold green as well, which is what I had before I used this serpentine green. And as I said, the green from Rose Gallery or White Nights, whichever you can find, they just work really well for me. On the ground here, I've just mixed a bit of Moonglow with a little bit of the Madder Rose just to make like a dull pinky purple. I quite like that vibe for the ground. And even though the post that the leaves are wrapping around isn't this colour in the scene, I decided to paint that post the same colour as well. But I am going to leave those ones on the right because I do think I just want to do them in like a flat grey, probably with a marker. And now something you'll notice about my sort of style is that I do mainly use ink to draw with and watercolour on top, but I do like to throw in a few marker pens here and there because they just make things quicker and easier, and I just like the way they look. So underneath the train, this is where we're getting to the point. Underneath the train in the photograph, if you squint, it is just black, black, black underneath there. It is really, really dark. So I'm going for it with my watercolor, and I'm also painting it really dark. Now, watercolor is fairly translucent, so I can still see just about my pen lines under there, and that will become important again shortly. But I have mixed my burnt umber, which is just sort of a brown, with indigo. You can mix brown with another blue like ultramarine or whatever, but indigo just instantly makes things so, so dark. It's a really beautiful dark blue colour. It's one of my favourite colours as well. And you can see how that's made a really nice, interesting dark tone underneath the train. Here I'm using a black brush pen. It's a Pentel black brush pen. It's another thing that I really like to use in my sketches just to add flat black. And that's to show the opening in the side of the carriage there, and there's another window sort of in the background, and there's another black area here. Again, just to add maximum contrast, because as soon as you start adding black bits or really, really, really dark bits in your sketch, that's when it really starts to pop. So I haven't left a huge amount of white on the train, but I haven't painted the sky in yet, and that's something I wasn't really sure whether I should do or not, so I'm leaving that decision more to the end. So the white of the page around the train is still there, which is nice, and it's contrasting nicely with those dark bits. Now you might be thinking, okay, cool, but like you've completely lost like all of the details in the bottom of the train, especially from this view. I am going to bring those back in a minute, but I'm just sort of adding a few extra bits that I missed here. And again, I try and keep the same kind of colours all the way through the sketch. So even if it's not exactly that reddish brown that I'm using, which is actually madder brown, I'm going to use it anyway because I just want to keep that consistency of the colours throughout the sketch. I think it makes it look better, and that is something I've discussed also in other videos. So now here I'm really going for it. So what I've done is I've mixed that green, just the straight up green, with indigo, and it's one of my favorite color mixes because it just makes this gorgeous dark, dark, dark green color. So you can see I've used the serpentine green, which is the yellowy green, for the lightest bits of the foliage. I've used the straight up green, the Rosa Gallery green, for the mid tones of the foliage. And now I've mixed the green with indigo to make the really, really dark bits. And you can see how much volume and shape that gives the foliage, and it just makes it look so much more interesting. It just pops off the page. So if you saw my last video on watercolor tips, I talked about this, how leaving the white of the page, painting the mid-tone, and then painting a really, really dark color. Always keep that kind of in mind. So the foliage, instead of the white of the page, I've got that kind of very nice yellowy green going on. So it's those three tones, you know, the lights, the mids, the darks. And if you keep that in mind when you're painting your sketch, you should come out with something that really kind of pops. So I'm not being super careful with this, guys. I'm being pretty loose, but that's, you know, that's the sort of approach that I like to take. But as you can see, it's coming together where it's just starting to look a bit better. It did go through a bit of an ugly stage there. I have sped this video up by 2, but I can guarantee you there was a section there in the middle where I was feeling... I don't know why this always happens. It's never left me. I was feeling quite down about how this sketch was looking because I just thought it looked a bit rubbish. But then I carried on and I started adding the dark bits, of which is the subject matter for today's video. And it just started looking better and better and better. So please don't give up on your sketch too soon. Never give up on your sketch because it's always a learning opportunity. Just keep going and you'll discover things. I discovered things in this sketch that I didn't really intend to do. And I was like, oh, that looks cool. Okay, like I'm going to do that again, you know, and that's exactly what it's about, really. So you can see on the left there, it's a bit shiny and I was trying to draw with my white gel pen, but it's still wet over there. So that's not a good idea. This is a Signo Uniball white gel pen. It seems to be working for me reasonably at the moment. I have a love-hate relationship, as do most people, I think, with white gel pens and the different ones out there. I think everything is still a tiny bit wet at the moment, so I've given up on the white gel pen. I'm just jumping over to the right-hand side, and I'm just using a Tombow marker just to add in like a flat grey colour for these railings here. And it's just a suggestion of the railings. There's obviously a lot more that carry on there. But it's just a suggestion, and you can see how I've sort of trailed off the sketch with a few blobs. That's something that I see sketches like Captain Tom, Tom Pagelhauser, I see him do, and I really love that style. So I have definitely what's the word? I've just flagrantly stolen that from him. So do check out Captain Tom's work on Instagram. He is an exceptional sketcher. I absolutely love his sketching. So now things are a little drier over here. I'm using the white gel pen. The white gel pen works best on super dark bits. Obviously it really does pop out a bit more, and I'm just very loosely redrawing in some of the lines under there. Again, it was not really the plan, but I thought, let me give it a go. I think it's going to look okay. And I actually think it looks fun. I think it looks really nice. So I'm glad I did that. And I was thinking maybe I could outline some of the leaves that you can no longer see the outlines of in the foreground. But again, it's still a bit wet there. So, you know, whilst you're waiting for things to dry, there are other things that can be done. So I'm using a Faber-Castell Pit Artist pen here in grey. Really like these pens for adding just tiny little ledges of shadow underneath things. Really useful marker pen to have. I have spoken about them to death in my other videos as well. But yeah, Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens in shades of grey. Now, there's purple flowers on this foliage, and I just wanted to show you that you could use anything that you've got. You could use paint marker, you can use pencils, crayons, anything. Try out what works best for you. I was finding actually that the colour pencil worked the best, but I did want to try this paint marker just to see what that would do. I was hoping it would overlay the dark bits of the foliage a bit better, but it didn't. I think because it's also a darkish purple, it didn't really show up too well. But that's why I decided to then outline it with the white gel pen just to bring it forward a bit. But yeah, I think the colour pencil was the better choice, at least for those top flowers. So yeah, just using the white gel pen. If in doubt, outline things in the dark bits with the white gel pen. And then there's this really cool kind of fence kind of in and amongst the foliage that I had initially drawn in pen, but I kind of knew I was going to go over with the dark paint. So I was like, oh, I'll just draw it in with the white gel pen. And then actually all of the other areas where I'd painted the dark green, I thought, well, maybe I'll just draw a bit of fence there, even though I definitely wasn't intending to do that. The actual fence I could see was just that big bit on the left in front of the train. But I thought maybe it would look interesting if I carried on the fence across the dark bits, and it kind of intermingles with the foliage and like hides behind it and stuff. It just adds a nice bit of texture and a bit of pattern into the sketch. And you can see how it really, just adding that detail really lifts the whole thing. It just gives it another layer of interest, another level of interest. And now the whole thing, I feel, is like starting to come together. I'm really enjoying this sketch now. As I said, it went through a bit of an ugly stage where, to be quite frank, I was like, I might actually give up on this because it's just not going the way I want it to. I'll always be honest with you guys. It's been a long time since I've recorded like a demo like this. I used to do them all the time for Pretty Sketchy TV. By the way, there I've got a bundle of 2 years worth of tutorials available just for $99. Which you can find in the video description below. 2 years worth of demos like this every single week. With reference photos that you can work through. So if you're looking for challenges, it's all different styles, all different techniques, all different subject matters. So if you're really looking for something to work through to try out lots of different styles, then that is a really good place to go. But yeah, I was really happy how this ended up. I think it's quite fun to look at. I think I hopefully have got across to you guys that adding dark bits really does make the whole thing sing, whether it's underneath the train or in the foliage. Here I'm just looking for places to add thicker black lines, but to be honest, I can't really find too many. I did have an idea that I was going to outline some of the leaves with the thicker lines, but I started doing it. I didn't really like it. So that's another thing. Again, just experiment with your sketch, do things, don't like it, don't do it, try something else, use it as an experiment. But I really hope this demonstration has shown you how much oomph and how much like adding really, really dark bits. Go darker than you think, just go for it. And also then the tip of using a white gel pen or a white correction pen if you want a thicker line, for example, like around that big wheel at the bottom there, how that technique can just really make the whole thing pop off the page. So I really hope this has been useful, guys. Again, do check out the links below. I've got online courses. I've got that tutorial bundle I mentioned. I've also got lots of in-person stuff coming up in the UK and South Africa. So do check it out. And any questions, just leave your comments below. I'll do my best to get back to them. But I really hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next video.